3 Bushmasters sent to Ukraine on April 8, 2022.
Well, these are the first 3 of 20 Bushmasters that Australia is sending to the Ukraine. Bushmasters are essentially a massive armoured military truck, think an even bigger military Hummer. Now, here at the Amberley Air Base, we saw the first 3 of those Bushmasters loaded onto the back of a cargo plane. That will leave for Europe sometime today. Now, the Bushmasters will be dropped at an unknown destination in Europe where they'll be taken to the Ukraine. How exactly we're planning to do that, we don't know. Minister Dutton said this morning that information was classified for the safety of the cargo and, of course, of the troops involved. What we do know is that the remaining 17 Bushmasters will be ferried over to the Ukraine on 5-day turnarounds. Each one will be repainted and branded with a Ukrainian flag. That's been done to the 3 this morning as well, on a fairly quick turnaround, might I add, given the fact that the Ukrainian president only asked for these Bushmasters last week. Now, like I said, these Bushmasters are armoured trucks. They'll be used over in the Ukraine for military transport. The Ukrainian ambassador was keen to emphasise they won't be used for offensive warfare. They're purely a defensive tool. We asked Peter Dutton if Australia was open to the idea of sending more weapons or supplies to the Ukraine this morning. He said this.
If there's a requirement to provide more support, then Australia is prepared to consider all of that. There's obviously been a lot of humanitarian support that we've provided. There'll also be a big ask of the developed world to contribute to the rebuild within the Ukraine, the shelling of residential areas, the destruction of facilities, of government buildings, of all of that infrastructure, which has been the second tragedy, followed obviously by the human tragedy. It'll take a lot of money and support to rebuild, and Australia will be there with Ukraine during that stage as well. And we hope that we can get through the war stage into the rebuild stage as quickly as humanly possible.
And touching back on how important these Bushmasters are, they were credited with saving countless lives in Afghanistan, and to take away the feeling, in fact, here this morning from both the Ukrainian ambassador and Minister Dutton, was that there's hope that it can do the same again in the Ukraine, and that's ferry civilians and soldiers to their destination safely in a country that's going through almost unimaginable turmoil.
Australian-built Bushmasters shifted for Ukrainian battlefields, as requested by Ukrainian President in April 3, 2022.
Big, burly and Bendigo built. Bushmasters have served the Australian Defence Force for decades. Now they've piqued the interest of a distant and desperate nation.
For example, you have very good armed personal vehicles, Bushmaster, that could help Ukraine substantially.
The Ukrainian president's request for Australian armoured vehicles appeared to catch defence on the hop.
I'm aware that we have been looking at options to provide advice to the Minister through his office.
I was just shown the message. It will make available for Bushmasters.
I'd suggest it's moved on from just 4, so those options are still being considered by the Minister.
While the discussions continue, the Prime Minister insists Ukraine's plea for help will be quickly answered.
We're not just sending our prayers, we're sending our guns, we're sending our munitions, and we're going to be sending our armoured vehicles, our Bushmasters as well. And we'll be flying them over there on our C-17s.
The ADF has hundreds of Bushmasters in service, but the government's considering whether it might also be quicker and easier to get some of the Australian-made armoured vehicles used by the Dutch military sent straight to Ukraine instead, before they're eventually replaced by this country's stockpile. Defence is also being kept busy with another pressing European challenge.
I can't give you a better number because we don't have one.
Let me ask the questions, please.
How to terminate a $90 billion French submarine project.
So taxpayers would be up for $5.5 billion on submarines that don't exist.
We'll be within that price simply.
Within that.
An expensive and messy divorce, but getting military aid to Ukraine is the department's more immediate priority. Andrew Green, ABC News, Canberra.